talk a bit about scaling. So scaling your SaaS business isn't for the faint of heart. Studies show that 70% of companies fail because of premature scaling. No matter whether your business is bootstrapped or VC-backed, all SaaS companies strive to achieve consistent growth. However, there is no overnight success formula to scale a SaaS business. Today, we are joined by some founders and leaders in the SaaS industry who will share their tips and experience in scaling their SaaS companies. Speaking to Stephen Rosenbush from the Wall Street Journal is Jenn Knight, co-founder and CTO of AgentSync, and Roy Solomon, co-founder and CEO of Salesroom. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning. So you're a founder. You've come up with a great idea for a business. You've raised a little bit of money. Maybe you've raised a lot of money. You've hired your team. And now it's time to actually get to work and build your business. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Jenn, first question for you. You've both launched significant businesses and brought them to scale already. But Jenn, you've worked at several companies that achieved really significant scale, LinkedIn and Stripe. So can you set the stage for us and just give us some sense of how those companies were launched on such a growth trajectory? What did you take away from those experiences?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I feel very lucky to have seen a very different arc of scale than the one that my company's in right now, right? We're earlier days. But I'd say LinkedIn, I was there 2011 to 2014. So when I joined, it was about 1,000 people. And it was a great experience to see what it looks like when you have a sales-led growth model. A lot of intentionality on how that business was run, scaling it up globally was a really cool experience. Just watch how the sales team impacted how product went to market and what it looked like to sell actually a very expensive product. Stripe was really different in a lot of ways, right? It developer first, great product market fit.
So that's an interesting point. So Stripe was developer first, and LinkedIn was more, at least equally focused on the business.
Yep. And so they were just really different trajectories. I think both of them had their own challenges as you scale up of understanding how you need to pivot the business, where you have to be flexible and how you're going to meet your newer buyers as you go into larger areas of the space. But just a ton to learn on both product development and also business development in both places, and watching how the different companies did it in different ways, both successfully.
Right. Roy, I know you've built a business in a previous life. Does this idea of focusing the company around product or around business resonate with you, and do you have a preference for how you approach that problem?
Yeah, so my first business was more focused kind of enterprise sales, top-down type of emotion. And the current business that we just launched, today we announced our funding, Salesroom. It's a lot more product-led growth, so focusing on salespeople and allowing them to sign up, see the value first, then talk about it amongst the team, and the growth will come virally from there. I think it really depends on the type of business you are at, the type of persona you're going after. I feel like nowadays, especially in today's downturn market, there is a lot of value in product-led growth and putting the product up front, showing value up front, and then talk business, so to speak. So that's what we're doing at Salesroom right now.
So you focused on the product?
Focusing on signing up, first see the value for the first 30 days, talking with you, understanding that the adoption is there, and then talk more commercial and growth paths from there.
Jenn, you raised an interesting point when we were speaking earlier about whether the business ends up trying to catch up with the product. And is that a problem?
I think it's an interesting challenge that everyone has to think about. And I love what Roy was talking about of knowing who you're selling to and how you're showing them value. If you're scaling, you're going to inevitably sell to people who aren't familiar to the first people you sold to. And so what I've seen, one of the challenges, and I think a lot about for our company, is making sure that we're always keeping pace with who we're selling to, and we're thinking about how to evolve the product for that and meet that use case. I think when you're scaling, you can have a situation, especially with product-led growth, where the product is ahead, the sales team is catching, or you're chasing the business because now you've gotten into a part of the market that you didn't think you'd be in. And even for us, we started sales-led, but we're going higher in the enterprise than we thought before, and that takes different skill, different muscle, a slightly different go-to-market than a mid-market or lower enterprise. And so it's just a constant dialogue and having to recalibrate. And sometimes it's not comfortable. You don't have the right people on the team or whatever that is, but you got to do it.
It's a tough environment right now. Would you agree? Or it's at least a seemingly tough environment. There's inflation. There are concerns about recession. There's global conflict. How does that figure into your strategy as you scale your current businesses?
I think what changed for startups is the assumptions that you're going to raise money every 12 months, like we had in the past 3 to 5 years, is gone. So building an operational model that has more 24, 30 months runway, I think it's a must in today's environment. And second, a lot more thoughtfulness about efficiency, so not growth at all costs, like we had before this situation. So thinking about hiring at the right time and not pre-hire, where to spend marketing dollars, how to reduce churn, how to create sustainable growth is, I think, what many companies and management teams are talking about nowadays.
Are you spending less money, or are you extending the period over which you spend the same amount of money?
I think we for sure extended our runway, which means on a monthly basis we're burning less money than we planned.
So talk to me about the importance of revenue retention as it relates to scaling, and how do you approach that challenge?
Yeah, I'll hop in and I'll steal something that Roy said earlier of thinking defensively. There's a model for us where we think about every dollar of revenue that we've retained, how do we continue to retain it? Like the world in which you can just churn through new customers and just send them back out the door and hope they come back or hope you find new ones is over. I think it's been over for a little while, to be honest, and depending on your space, like for us, we're in a very niche market, so reputationally, we really need to retain our customers and create a great experience, especially when you're early on. We invested first in customer success, then scaling sales, then marketing to really keep our focus as an organization and our commitment to customers high.
So, customer success is an important concept right now. We've spoken earlier about this concept of building the business inside out, focusing on customer success. How does that work?
I think for us, we talked about it. I mean, we even have one of our values is customer love. It's been something that's been important and modeled as founders. We really think about what our customers' needs are. We made very active feedback loops and a very active dialogue.
You staffed that function before you staffed marketing.
We staffed it before we staffed marketing, before we staffed sales. So the entire company knows, from day one how important it is for us. And I think the other thing that we talked about earlier is feedback loop, especially in this market. Being able to prove value to your customers and respond rapidly to your customers is so critical. And if you haven't funded the team that's sitting there every day with the customers, understanding their risks, their pains, the data they need from you to justify their case to retain you as a tool that they're using, you're missing a huge opportunity. It's going to be a harder market for sales to go out into, and so that just retention and reinvestment and value creation that you can have if you commit to that is huge.
Yeah, you've built a nine-figure business.
Yeah.
Where did customer retention fit into that equation, and what were the other pillars of that growth?
So I think what worked for us is kind of dividing customer success into defense and offense, hunters and farmers, depends how you want to define it, but there is a team that highly incentivized to make the customer happy. So NPS and adoption and more teams using us, and it's not about revenue goals, it's not about upsells and cross-sells and all of that. There was a team dedicated for that as well, but that team became the DNA of the company almost. And I knew as a product owner, as an executive, if I need to understand how a customer perceives us, how I perceive a certain feature or a certain capability, the first team I will go to is this farmers team. They talk with them all day long. They almost the consultants to the customer. So they feed a lot of information, as Jenn mentioned, into the entire organization to make it very aligned with the market.
How do both of you think about marketing function, especially social media in this environment? Do you take out social, Super Bowl ads? Do you want to have a presence in certain types of venues, or is that not important?
So right now, because of the business of Salesroom and what we do a video conferencing for salespeople. For us, it's all about being in the virtual sphere and talk about the challenges of virtual selling.
So you're not worried about naming rights for stadiums?
No, not at the moment.
But maybe.
But maybe next year. For us, it's all about content at the moment. So being very empathic about how hard is it to sell over video. Best practices of how to build trust, build rapport with your buyer, and through this sense of community that we had created mostly on LinkedIn, we're getting a lot of inbound requests, and that's the marketing engine that we built.
Jenn, we're drawing on your experience at LinkedIn and Stripe. What are the challenges that are really specific to scaling a SaaS business as opposed to any other kind of business?
Yeah, I think there's a beauty of SaaS where you can move really quickly and you can test and innovate. There's also a challenge of, I would call it shiny object. We all get distracted a little bit by shiny object, or maybe over-rotating on a customer need can be a challenging one.
Over-rotating on a customer need?
On a customer need,
What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I think when you're early on, it can be really tempting, especially if you have a big deal with someone, to really take their needs and requirements and bring them into the product in a way that is opinionated to the customer, not opinionated to how you want to build the product. So there's an interesting balancing act there of how do you meet their need while staying true to your product. Often when you're early on and you're scaling, you can't say no. So it's
the customer's not always right?
Yeah.
Their limits?
They probably have a great insight. It's how do you want to express that in your product to meet that need, and say, okay, I can hear what you're saying as your problem statement. You think we'd solve it this way, we're actually going to solve it this way. Can we agree mutually that we're still solving the problem statement and it's feeding to our larger product vision? So the biggest thing there is either at feature level or even bringing more products to market is there's a balancing act of being laser focused on what you're solving while continuing to solve customer needs and not getting too distracted by new products to deliver or new features to deliver. You're in a proving ground, right? And you got to prove yourself on the key features. I also would go back to this customer experience thing. I think one of the reasons that I think it's so valuable when you're scaling is you're going to get stuff wrong as a product. You're going to deliver something that has a bug. You're going to misinterpret a requirement. And the way you retain your customer is that partnership and that deep commitment to their success and knowing who's upset by what or what went wrong. And you can't get that by just a pure technical play. So there's a lot as you scale. You're not going to get it all right. Retaining focus is a really big key for us.
So Roy, you're both in the B2B space. So I'm going to imagine that you can't really rely on viral growth, say the way TikTok would grow. You're not going to achieve scale the way TikTok achieved scale. So what is it about the B2B space that you need to understand as you scale, and how much of that is really driven by sales, direct contact with the customer?
Yeah, I think in B2B it's more brick by brick type of growth versus the TikTok type of growth models. And brick can be in different types, different kinds, depends on the timing. A lot of it is driven by sales conversations, either inbound or outbound. you have to position yourself as a consultant, as a true expert in the market, if it's in cloud, in data, in APIs, whatever you're selling. And I think if the market would truly appreciate your expertise, they will come, or they will accept your invitation for that consultation through outbound tactics. It takes time. It takes a few years.
This is sort of an expensive proposition. You're investing time and energy. To what extent do you have to be strategic about choosing your shots, focusing on this customer as opposed to that customer?
I think very strategic, and I think now we're living through a change in the mindset than 6-8 weeks ago. There was an immense investment in marketing awareness when we all raise money like there is no tomorrow, which we can't really measure. The ROI is vague. And I think now what we're going to see is a lot more measurable means to acquire customers, to convert them into happy and growing revenue generator type of a player. So I think we're going to see companies invest less in breadth of channels and go deep into 2 or 3 that really works for them.
Jenn, how do you both really think about success? What is the metric of success now, and is it different than the metric that you might have focused on 6 months ago when it was all about revenue and all about growth?
Yeah, so for us, I think one thing I've really appreciated is that we built a really strong business models and plans early on, and so we were re-looking at them and understanding them again in the context of changes, but our plan hasn't changed. And it was helpful to stand in front of our team and say, our plan hasn't changed. Here's some things we're going to adjust to be responsible to respond to the market. Here's some experiments we may forego for a little bit, but from a core mission and values perspective, we're still marching to the same plan. We've been measuring our metrics. We know what we want to hit. When we were raising our B, we had a very clear plan for why we were doing it, and so it wasn't a huge thrash. And that's something that I think all of us are going to learn how to do and benefit from in this new world, where if you do that, these times are scary, and there's some minor adjustments, but it isn't a whole recalibration. There's just a few tweaks that are in hand when we want to make bets, and then maybe when we want to delay bets. But the core product, what we're doing, the metrics that we're going after as a business, don't shift.
They don't shift. Roy, there are many different definitions of success, definitions of scale. Where do you come down on what that means?
I think for us it's 2 main ones. One is adoption. How many meetings salespeople are doing on the platform? How many buyers are involved? How many clips they create because the product allowed you to create clips during a meeting? Kind of how users are using the platform. And second, it's about revenue and the cost of that revenue. So how many dollars we put into the engine, how many we got in return.
So in the last 50 seconds or so, I'd like each of you to very quickly, for the benefit of the founders in the room, point out the biggest mistake and the most important thing that they actually need to do. Jenn, let's start with you.
I think I'll start with the most important. I think the most important thing is figure out how to be resilient in your flexibility. Things will change under you all the time, and you as a leader of the company have to be able to internalize that well. Biggest mistake, would have hired faster.
Got it. Roy.
Listen to your customer, but truly listen to them. And biggest mistake, don't grow too fast, especially not now. It's going to be very hard to raise money in the next 12 months, so reserve your runway as much as you can.
Thank you so much for a great conversation. We're going to leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.